These are the questions you should be asking yourself when you're considering drinking things that are meant to replace other naturally occurring things.
But like, how many times have you eaten cookie dough, raw cookie dough?
Protein is important for women in general, but especially during pregnancy and especially during postpartum, especially if you're breastfeeding.
Ew. What a weird thing to say.
I just don't think that we should be slugging protein shakes and protein bars and protein pancakes and protein muffins and protein oats and protein. Welcome back to the Sis Let's Heal podcast and part 2 of our food myth series, where we're breaking down some of the most common claims and misconceptions floating around in the health and wellness space. In part 1, we talked about red meat, eggs, and seed oils, 3 foods that tend to get a lot of fear-based headlines despite the research being much more nuanced. Today, we're continuing the conversation with a few more topics that spark a lot of debate online: milk, protein, and gluten. You've probably heard things like dairy is inflammatory, plant milks are automatically healthier, most people eat too much protein, or gluten is something that everyone should avoid. But as with most nutrition topics, the reality is much more complex than a viral headline or a 30-second TikTok clip. In this episode, we're going to unpack where these ideas come from, what the research actually shows, and how to think about these foods in the context of a balanced diet. Let's dive in. I feel like we can go on milk, I found.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't expect it. It surprised me. So let's go with milk. Do you want to tell them what we're going to compare, or shall I?
Go ahead.
Okay, so we wanted to first talk about raw milk, but then as we looked into raw milk, that made us question, okay, what about raw milk compared to like pasteurized milk? And then when we talk about pasteurized milk, what about whole milk versus like skim or non-fat milk? And then while we're on that topic, what about raw milk versus pasteurized milk versus like your plant-based milks, your almond milk, your oat milk, your soy milk? There's just a lot that we could talk about when it comes to milk. I'll tell you my take. I know you've gone the raw milk way before. I've never done it. I've never tasted it. I don't know if I'm just like weirded out by the concept, but I know there's a lot of like, I think about Alex from Culture Apothecary. She's like team hardcore raw milk. And I don't know what she's learned about raw milk as she's been on her own journey and everything. I just don't think I can come around to it because it almost sounds silly to me. It's like, okay, we can have raw milk or we can have pasteurized milk, which obviously there's a reason we've come up with this pasteurization process. Like there's a reason someone came up with that. And why did they do that?
Yes.
To reduce your likelihood of contracting E. coli, salmonella, listeria, I think even lacto, or it's another, I think it's a Campylobacter, I think is another virus bacteria. But that's why they came out with pasteurization, was to reduce your risk of contracting those. So when people are still like buying raw milk and drinking whole milk, it almost sounds like you just want to take the gamble. You don't have to, but you're like, I'm going to risk it this time. Let's see what happens. Let's see if it catches me. But like if you're pregnant, if you're a child, if you're immunocompromised, like probably not the gamble you should be making because you're more likely to be negatively impacted by contracting those bacterias. But yeah, that's my take on raw milk. What's your take on it?
I kind of disagree with you.
Okay.
Because granted, risk is there. Those same risks are also there for like eggs or chicken or like, do you know what I mean? Where they're like, don't touch an egg and then like touch something else and now your whole house is infected with salmonella, or is it salmonella with eggs?
Yeah, but that's from the yolks. Like that's the internal.
But do you get what I'm saying about like how often are you hearing of the salmonella from the raw egg because you didn't wash your hand right after.
I don't know if I hear about that or even do it myself often, you know?
That's what I'm saying. Like that's what it gives to me when people are so scared of this raw milk because of what could possibly happen. You're more likely to get a E. coli from lettuce,
Hmm.
and everyone eats lettuce every day.
I don't.
Or I don't either. That was a big claim. Everyone eats lettuce freely without much concern. Do you know what I mean? But everyone's so terrified of this raw milk. Um, so I think there are risks that come with it. Where you get your raw milk from, I think, is very important. Um, but that goes the same with like anything else. Where you get it from is very important. So, like, I personally, for me, I would still do raw milk. For me, it was more of a taste thing. Um, and that's really it. That's my opinion on it. I think people are over scared, undereducated on the raw milk.
I I think I would be proud to be associated with that camp because then when I compare it to, say, your pasteurized milk, whether it's whole,
Hmm.
non-fat, whatever, it seems like all of the same benefits are there. Like there might
Hmm.
be some slight alterations to like enzymes, whatever, but it seems like for the most part like all of the things that we're looking to get out of milk as far as vitamins, calcium, protein, fats, those kinds of things. It seems like they're all there in like either form, except the pasteurized version just reduces the risk of getting E. coli or salmonella or whatever other bacteria. So for me, I just like would rather not run the risk. And that's just like in my head. Because as far as I know, they're not doing anything else in the pasteurization process, you know?
Yes. Well, with the pasteurization process, what they're doing is just like heating it to high temperatures in order
To
to
kill
kill
off.
off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but we've seen with the other things that we've chatted about, um, that cooking the red meat in the high temperatures or is not good for the proteins and can alter the protein makeup of it. Do you know what I'm saying? So I think that's where like the big raw milk situation comes into play, but I think it's a personal preference because milk offers just as much nutrients versus a lot of other milks on the market. But if you want that all natural benefits of it, I say that's the way to go. Personal preference.
I was also going to say when it comes to like the protein, like I'm not drinking milk for the protein. Is it a source of protein? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm drinking milk or cream or whatever it is because I like my coffee a little creamy, you know?
Yes, I think too, where people do is like that natural bacteria for the gut is sometimes burned off within the pasteurizing process, as well
Hmm.
as it sometimes is easier to digest for people because of that natural bacteria. So I think that's a pull for raw milk as well. But it tastes like gamey.
If
That's the
that's
best
the
way to describe it.
if that's the argument we want to go off of, then my counter argument is then why don't we just have some fermented dairy like kefir, Greek yogurt if you're looking for the gut benefit from it.
Absolutely. So like that's what I mean. I like it's like a personal preference situation where
Mhm.
cuz like I don't personally drink raw milk.
Mhm.
I have in the past. Um it was more of a taste thing. I was never really scared of any kind of sickness though,
Mhm.
personally.
I don't know.
Um
Maybe they're winning. They're making me fear it.
I was going to say they might be making you fear it. Cuz like I said that stuff can happen, but like how many times have you eaten cookie dough, raw cookie dough?
That's worth the risk. It tastes
Well, that's what I'm
delicious.
That's what I'm saying though. Like, we do all these things, or like you accidentally touch the chicken and then touch your like face and you're like, oh my God, I'm gonna die, and you don't.
If we want to talk about the cookie dough too, apparently flour is raw until you bake it or cook it. So like we're taking more than one risk there.
Exactly. People
I
just
don't
like
know.
down the raw eggs. So like I feel like they're,
I see that too.
yeah,
I don't think I could do that.
no, I don't think I could do that either, but like we're running the same risk. You get a salad out at like somewhere. You don't know if they cleaned that properly. If it was cleaned properly, it could have E. coli all over it.
Yep. I
So
agree with
it's
that.
just kind of, yeah, it's just a personal preference. I think it's not something to be scared of, though.
hmm And I think going off of what you had said about like other forms of milk being like the
Mm-hmm.
plant-based forms, I just really think I don't know if we have to say this. I'm gonna say it because like maybe we just haven't like talked about it enough to like get everyone around the bend with this one. But like your non-dairy milks are not inherently healthy unless like dairy really wrecks you and you need an alternate. But from what I've seen, like if you're trying to get the nutrient benefits of milk, like just drink milk. And when it comes to whole versus low fat, like it's really up to your diet and what you need. All they really say is like, and obviously you can assume this, if it's higher in fat, it's going to be more satiating. It's going to help with fat soluble vitamins and just digesting and absorbing those and your protein content. But like if you're trying to replace them and think that you're getting the same benefits, like you're really not. Because a lot of like these other forms of milk, like if they don't naturally have calcium, like they're fortifying it with it. And it's like, okay, is that synthetic? Like, how is that actually being absorbed in my body? I've seen, and I don't know if we've talked about this before, but soy milk apparently is like the closest comparison to regular milk, like dairy milk. And even so, like it really only has like the protein content. So similar calories, but nothing beyond that.
Yeah, but then you go into the whole aspect of like, it's just not genetically what our body was made to do, because then when you give men high amounts of soy, you're giving them high amounts of estrogen, and it's just like, do you get what I mean? Like your body's just like, this is not supposed to be here.
But even
Yes.
I know we've talked about it before with like the other forms of milk, but like the almond milk, I still can't get around to that one. I've seen people make like almond milk themselves, but like I go back to the almonds don't have teats. Like that's just not how it works.
Yes, I would rather see though someone home make that almond milk, because I've watched how they home make it, than like an almond breeze at the
Yeah.
store, or
Well,
like a silk almond milk. Like, you know what I mean? Because that's like they're highly processing that in order to make that in large quantities. If you are at home making it for yourself, adding like a honey for sweetness, um, I think that's very different to me. I don't think it's milk.
no.
It's almond water.
And that's what I've seen is it's majority water with like small
Yeah.
traces of almond.
Yeah, it's not milk to me. But
You wanna do you wanna experiment?
I
Wanna
can't
drink some
experiment
almond
with
milk?
almond milk.
See if it's really like majority water. See if you even
I
have a
can't
reaction.
I can't drink almond milk. That is not my type of experiment. But even oat
um,
milk, like people make their own oat milk, and it pretty much is just like mainly water.
mhm.
And
It
granted,
says that it has like a little bit of protein, but it's mostly carbs because it's coming from oats.
yeah. Like I don't think, I guess maybe they call it, and maybe this was a whole marketing thing whenever they came out with all these nut milks and whatever, was people, we want to replace this in the place of milk. So let's call it milk, even though it's like mostly water.
I
Because
wonder
how
if
much
they
better
make it white.
they might,
Like, what if they like
because,
bleach it?
yeah. Could you imagine, like, how much different would it be if you went up and said, "Can I have a vanilla oat milk latte?" Than if you went up and said, "Can I have a vanilla oat water latte?" Like, that doesn't sound as appetizing in my head.
I don't think, I don't know. Would people consider putting it in their coffees if it was like you don't put coconut water in a latte,
True.
but they do make coconut milk, don't they?
How is coconut milk made?
These are the questions you should be asking yourself when you're considering drinking things that are meant to replace other naturally occurring things.
Yeah. Because I'm trying to think, if we have coconut water, that's the water that's in the coconut. So I'm guessing they take the actual meat of the coconut to make the milk.
That's what I would assume.
And probably go through a similar process as they do with almonds and oats, where it is a lot of water added in with the meat. That's what I'm assuming. Um,
But we really don't know.
I don't know. I don't want to sound like stupid, but I really like, but this is how all of America sounds. When they get these things randomly, and it's, if you ask people on the street, like if you stand outside a coffee shop and say, "What did you get?" And then you're like, "Okay, how was that made? How was all those ingredients made?" And they're like, "I don't know." And it's like, "Okay, you drink that. You enjoy that." Like, it's crazy to me.
Yeah, and it's normalized, which I think is even crazier.
Yeah. Um, which, granted, I wanna go on the record of saying, like, I will go get a vanilla latte or something with whole milk. I don't know how the vanilla syrup is made, personally.
It's
I know it's
probably
probably,
straight sugar.
no, it's not made correctly. That sits in my 20%. Everybody,
Exactly.
leave me go. I do it once in a blue moon.
Mhm.
But just because I made that analogy, I wanted to go on the record and say I do be getting drinks here and there.
I just got one
Can't
on
sound like a
Tuesday.
liar. Yes, exactly.
With whole
Exactly.
milk.
Exactly. But I just wanted to, for like when it's an everyday thing, it's like,
It shouldn't
what are
be an
you,
everyday thing.
yeah, what are you putting in your body every day? Just a
One
question.
one thing that I want to make note of, because we talk about blood sugar a lot, is that with your oat milk, it when you compare it to dairy and even soy milk, it has a higher likelihood of spiking your blood sugar because it's more carbs than your dairy that has fats and proteins to kind of offset that spike. So something to consider. And it's funny, I have more of like a blood sugar bias when I'm looking at things because I've been looking and researching a lot more about gestational diabetes. So I would say if you have gestational diabetes or even risks of diabetes in general, oat milk should not be your go-to for that reason.
Yeah.
That was a lot of
So
rabbit holes
let's,
with milk.
I was gonna say, well, we have more rabbit holes to go down because we didn't even talk about the difference between whole milk and non-fat or skim milk.
I touched on it
So,
briefly, but I really think the biggest thing is like down to the calories and the fat content. Like that's really the only difference. Like it seems to me from what I've seen, like the nutrients are still all there, but you have to think when you have less fat, those fat soluble vitamins are going to have a harder time being absorbed and digested because there's not as much fat to accompany them.
yes. Well, I think, you know what I just thought of is how, you remember we were saying like the almond milk is just almond water, and like you're not getting the same like nutrients from the almonds. Skim milk is milk water,
Yep.
pretty much, where you're not getting all those benefits as you were just to eat a handful of almonds, um, or just like a watered substitute that they still kind of call milk. And it's
It
more highly
is.
processed because they're stripping all those nutrients out of it pretty much in order to lessen your calories and fat.
Do you remember, and I remember this from high school, probably 11th grade, they had, and I forget what it was called, but it like just spun really fast and like separated the fat out of the milk or something.
No.
Okay. And I don't, like I said, I don't remember what it was called, but I think that's like the process of creating skim milk is like just the fat is removed from it
Okay.
in a spinning process, physics.
Yeah. Which, let's be completely honest and put it in a normal everyday setting. Let's go back to a coffee shop. You go into the coffee shop. You get an iced vanilla latte with non fat milk or like skim milk, something like that. You sit with your day. The caffeine is sitting in your stomach. Your blood sugar is through the roof because you have no fats to combat your blood sugar. You have inflammation running havoc because you have alcohol, sugar alcohols in there, probably if you get like a non fat vanilla syrup or something like that.
It's the
And then
sugar-free vanilla syrups.
you're hungry and you're like, why am I hungry? Like, I just put something into my system. It should be satiated. It's not. You would have such a different experience if you walked in and got that whole fat milk in order. One, it will help to combat that blood sugar spike, but then it also will satiate and help with your digestion in order to have your gut have a better experience, have you
Mhm.
have a better experience.
My brain went on a tangent, and I'm just going to say it because this is my this is my perspective when I go into a coffee shop when I'm ordering, because I know when we go to a coffee shop, it's kind of like a treat yourself moment. You know, it's not something you typically do, at least not for me, not for you. And like you just want to enjoy yourself. So you're like, do I get the small? Do I get the medium? Do I get the large? Like, is it only a small and a large option? In my head, when I'm making that decision, my heart, my brain always wants to say large because in my head, I get to enjoy it for longer. But then the reality of like what a large actually is in comparison to the small, it's a little bit more caffeine. And do we need more caffeine in our system? Probably not. And it's also just more milk. And do we need to drink just more milk? Probably not. And then you're also adding in either more sugars, more whatever syrups that they're however they're made. We don't want to know, I don't think. But you're just adding more of those things. And I always get the small now or a medium if we want to go happy medium. I'm never getting a large anymore because I'm like, I just don't need more. Like I'll sip and I'll savor whatever I get, but like I don't need the calories. I would rather eat my calories. You can get more nutrients if you're eating, your fiber, your protein, those kinds of foods. But like I don't go to a coffee shop looking for like a meal replacement coffee?
Yeah,
So I don't know if that helps anyone
absolutely.
else when they go to a coffee shop, but that's how I think of things when I order.
Yes, I would agree. Now, with that being said, what kind of milk do you drink and why?
I drink whole milk. Even when I go to a coffee shop, even at home. Um, I will say at home I'm not drinking milk. Josie's drinking milk. I'm not drinking milk. But I just
Mhm.
get her like regular whole milk from Walmart. Great value. And probably I would say the why is because it's easy, because I know she needs the fats from the whole milk for her brain development and just everything else as she grows. But that's really why we get that, what we get.
Okay.
If I'm having milk, I'm just trying to think because I get a gallon typically. She doesn't drink that much milk. She's not the kid where it's like she has to get like 24, 32 ounces of milk a day. Like she gets a cup. She gets about 8 ounces. If she wants more, I'll give her more, but it's not typical that she wants more. Um, I make Ninja Creamies with it if we're like getting close to it going bad or I just really want to make some ice cream. That's really the only time I'm drinking milk though.
I personally get the 100% grass-fed whole milk. And I find mine at Giant. Um, there are studies that show that the grass-fed milk is better than just regular milk. To put it in the clearest way, it's like the closest you can get to raw milk that's still pasteurized. And to me, it doesn't have that like gamey aftertaste. But benefits that come from like grass-fed cows versus like the regular cows, you can get more omega-3 like fatty acids, more CLA, which CLA is I'm gonna butcher it. I was butchering butcher. I'm
It's
gonna butcher it.
inevitable.
It's conjugated lanolinic acid.
I am not looking at it clearly, but I would guess the L was a leolinic.
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 Leoleic.
Okay.
There's no N.
Okay.
Leoleic acid. Conjugated linoleic acid.
And what does that do for us?
Sorry, it has a lot of like anti-inflammatory effects. It could help like your metabolism, heart healthy support. That all comes from like the grass-fed and like knowing that they're not serving your cows candy bar wrappers
Mhm.
and soy and grain and all that kind of stuff. A lot more vitamins, all that kind of stuff. The organic, of course, no like antibiotics or all in all, having that grass fed mixed with that organic just in terms means less like hormones and chemicals, but also more nutrients. So I like that personally for myself.
And are you typically drinking milk or is it really just like in your coffees?
I probably have 2 cups of milk every day.
Oh, you do your protein shake with it too.
I do my protein shake and I do my matcha.
Yeah,
I'm
I
not
just
just
put
drinking a cup of milk generally.
right. Right. And I just do and I measured it today just to see cuz like I don't really like log my food anymore, so it really doesn't matter how much I'm putting in my coffee, but I was like I'm just going to like cover the number while I put in the cream that I want. It's like
Mm-hmm.
I think is it 1 tablespoon is like 15 milliliters. So I put like two, maybe two and a half tablespoons of what you call it, cream in my coffee. It's like
Mm-hmm.
that makes it creamy, just creamy enough for me.
Absolutely. When I make like a coffee, I need I don't just use milk, I use like a heavy cream or something too cuz like I need that well, I don't need it. I want that creaminess
Hmm.
of it. But that's not an everyday occurrence. Like
Yeah.
and then of course it's sweetened with um honey or maple syrup or just your all natural sugars and oh, it's so
Hmm.
good.
I measured the maple syrup too. It's practically a 1-to-1 as far as weight goes with the maple syrup and the cream. Pretty tasty to me.
Nice. Very nice.
Yes. Do you feel I should mention you might have converted me to the grass-fed organic for Josie. Well, I think I'll
You
buy it
should.
for me. Probably not if it's for ice creams. Like, I feel like I'm already doing much better making my own ice cream at home than like going the whole grass-fed route just for ice cream. If I felt I needed to or like saw benefits from it, I probably would, but I might do it for Josie.
I think you guys should in the aspect of you don't drink that much milk. If you guys were running through milk,
Yeah.
maybe I would say I know I would always say get it, but for like a pricing standpoint, I'd say it is going to be more expensive.
Mhm.
Point blank period. Um, but you're not drinking that much milk. Anyways, whatever's
Right.
left over of the grass fed, just make that into your Ninja Creamies and
Mhm.
call it a day. But I 100% recommend the 100% grass fed organic milk. I think it tastes great and it has so many great benefits and less processing and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I think talking about milk kind of leads us into like protein talk. We've talked about the protein content, the calcium, those kinds of things with milk. But I think one thing that many people and usually women in general are confused about is your need for protein. And that it's like just a gym bro thing to do is to have protein and to push protein and be all bro protein on us. But I think what we forget to realize is that protein is a very important aspect of our diet because our bodies are like all protein. Our skin is protein, our organs are protein, our like everything is protein. I'm trying to think. It's like all protein, protein and water. So we got to stay hydrated. But especially talking about our blood sugar and balancing that out, we need to make sure that we're having protein with our meals because that's balancing the blood sugar. Like plain simple end of story, balancing the blood sugar.
Mhm.
But where the caveat comes in is that protein needs are different for everyone, depending on their body weight, their activity level, their age, and even pregnancy or postpartum status. Like, I would say protein is important for women in general, but especially during pregnancy and especially during postpartum, especially if you're breastfeeding. What's your take on protein? Because I know you've gone through pretty extreme protein swings.
My take on protein is that everyone cares about protein too much. Um, I think it's very important. I think it's not the end all be all health situation that I think everyone tries to make it is like, oh, I get enough protein. I don't know why I don't know why I'm not losing weight or I don't know why I'm not gaining muscle. And it's like, okay, do you get enough fiber to support your gut? Do you get enough sleep at night? Do you get enough water? Like, I don't want to say I'm a protein hater because I do love protein and I do love to put it in my diet. I'm just like a protein obsession hater because that's always whenever I talk to anyone about anything health wise, generally the first comment out of their mouth is like, I gotta eat more protein. Or I gotta, oh, I've been trying to eat more protein. And it's like, okay, good job. Like, it's not a make or break for me at all. I think also protein can go day to day, depending on what you did during the day.
So, what you're
If you
saying is
had
a lot of people that you talk to think that protein is the new magic pill in diet culture.
pretty, Pretty much. And I think that's what frustrates me. And I think I get a little extreme with it, with my hatred of it. But I think, because like, I think also protein can be like a listen to your body situation. Like how people do that a lot of times with fiber, of they're like, oh, I'm constipated. Let me like eat some high fibrous foods. I think you can also kind of do the same for protein in certain aspects of where if you have like a very physical, intense day, maybe you eat a little bit more protein throughout the day or the next day. Whereas if you like had just like a veg day and didn't really do anything, I don't know if you need as much protein that day or the next day. But that's also goes person by person. So I think protein's just so tricky.
I agree with the individuality aspect of what you just said, but I think that overall, it's not just the protein focus on like your higher or lower activity days, but just like your overall calorie intake and the ratio of what those calories are made of. Like, I wouldn't say that
Yeah.
protein's the thing that needs to be adjusted. It's like, well, if you live a pretty sedentary lifestyle, like, yes, you should be making sure that you have protein in every meal, but like your overall calorie intake doesn't need to be as high as someone that might be the same like height and weight that has like a more active job, because they'll obviously need
Yeah.
more. But I think taking your specific season into account as well is super important, like I said, for like pregnancy or postpartum if you're breastfeeding too.
Exactly. That's kind of, I feel like we just kind of said the same thing in different fonts.
Mhm. I just didn't want
Yeah.
people to think like, oh, if I move less, like I don't need as much protein. Like, I still think protein should have a focus. I just don't think that we should be slugging protein shakes and protein bars and protein pancakes and protein muffins and protein oats and protein insert whatever you can find on the store shelves just because it says protein.
I agree.
Because that's where we get a little crazy.
That's where I get frustrated.
Is all the fake protein stuff.
Yeah. To where I'm like, I can't. I generally have somewhat close to the same amount of protein every day. And then if I have like a crazy day where that's out of the norm, and I don't know, maybe I just decided to be crazy one day and like work out for 3 hours lifting heavy weights. I don't know. Then I'm like, yeah, let's get a little bit more protein in there.
Or
But
like a
other than
hike or
that,
something.
yeah, the 3 hour every day, the 3 hour weightlifting was a little crazy.
Yeah.
But if I decided to do something crazy like that, I'm like, okay, but that's more comes as a well-rounded, let's nourish the body a little bit more because I put it through something it doesn't normally go through, and I'll drink more water as well. I'll have more fiber as well. I'll have more calories as well. Like it I just hate that everything's so focused around protein.
I think what's important to focus on when it comes to protein is that it can improve your satiety. So it helps regulate your blood sugar, it regulates your cravings, it regulates your appetite. It can
Mhm.
support a better body composition, which will in turn support a healthier body composition in general, but also your
Mhm.
metabolism. And it will also help with maintaining your lean muscle mass while you age, through pregnancy, through breastfeeding, when our bodies are highly taxed. And those are the things that we need to consider when it comes to protein. Not so much like we just need to be only eating protein all the time and that is going to solve our fat loss resistance issues. Flipping the coin a little bit from talking about protein, let's talk a little bit about gluten, which is more of obviously like your carbohydrates. But I think what a lot of people, just from what I've seen, is they assume that like gluten free is somehow inherently just like healthier. And I'm not
Mhm.
really sure why. I think a lot of people maybe have confused like their personal gluten intolerances with just like a widespread, like, oh, if we just cut gluten out, like we're less inflamed and puffy, which I think has just
Mhm.
kind of put a bad taste in a lot of people's mouth around gluten. But like, I'm a person to say that I've never had a problem with gluten. We're friends, and I'm never leaning towards something that says gluten free just because it says gluten free. So, what are your thoughts with gluten?
I think the only people that really have gluten problems are people with celiac disease, and um there are still some gluten sensitivities, but I think most of the quote unquote gluten problems is more of a processed bread, processed grain problem rather than a gluten problem.
Well, even so, like with your specific experience, like it's not the gluten really that affects you, but more so like what's likely sprayed on the gluten from how it's farmed.
Yes, the folic acid, which a lot of people cannot break down, which we've talked about before on this podcast. Only 60% of the people in America can break down folic acid, yet it's sprayed on 100% of the grains. That's why I tend to go organic when it comes to the bread route, because I know I'm someone that struggles to break down the folic acid, and it comes across as more inflammation, not as much bloating, but I can feel it. Like, I feel most of my inflammation in my fingers, and I can feel the swell in my fingers after having folic acid.
Yeah. I think we should also clarify where gluten comes from. So, like you said, like it's in a lot of your breads because it's like the wheat, the barley, the rye. That's really like the only places you'll find gluten. But I will say, like a lot of processed things, they're either, processed in a facility that also processes these gluten containing things. So, like, even if you are getting gluten free, depending on your level of tolerance, if you are finding you have issues with it, like, you have to be really careful. And I say this because I have a client who is, I want to say she has celiac. Like she has times when, she's either traveling for work or she went out and about and like she said no gluten or, count this out for me, and it comes on her plate and she doesn't know it until afterward. Because when you ask for something without it, you just trust that like they do what you say. And she's been quote unquote glutened, and then she's out for the count for like a week. Like her stomach's off, her digestion's off, like she feels awful, and it's just not a good time. But for the majority of people, like that's not you. You can tolerate things. May you have a sensitivity? Yeah, it's possible. But I think we have to remember that like gluten does contain a lot of good nutrients when you are getting a quality form of these whole grains. But like we talk about all the time, fiber comes from gluten a lot. And if we're completely restricting that, like we're missing out on that. We're missing out on more B vitamins. We're missing out on magnesium, even some plant-based like iron sources. So I think best kind of practice here is to just reduce the processed forms of gluten, getting the more whole forms. If you're getting like barley or rye or whatever, like soaking them or making sure that they're in like a soup where they're easily digestible, that your body doesn't have to like work overtime to digest these because they're not cooked properly. Clarification for the record. Fiber does not come specifically from gluten. Fiber comes from the wheat that contains gluten as well.
Yes. Gluten is actually like a couple different like proteins.
Yes.
Not containing protein, actual molecular proteins.
Like your body is proteins, but it doesn't like, we're not eating humans for protein.
Ew. What a weird thing to say. So what gluten does is it kind of like gives that bread the elasticity and all of that good stuff that we like about bread pretty much. I think another common misconception, this is like a food myth within a food myth, is that like sourdough like doesn't contain the gluten, and it does.
It's still from flour.
Yeah, through the fermentation process in sourdough, it does break down some aspects of the gluten. It does not remove gluten at all.
I would say if anything, the sourdough might make it more easily digestible because of the fermented kind of aspect of it.
Yes, that's what it is. And that's why people think sourdough does not have gluten. And then when they eat like regular processed bread. They're like, why am I bloating? Why am I feeling like gross? It's because there's like 20 other ingredients in that processed bread that's giving you
Minimally.
that feeling. Yes. Rather than your sourdough, which is just like your flour and water and like salt or something like that. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like I've heard people say before, if they have like inflammation in like joints or something like that, they're like, I'm going to try and cut out gluten and see if that helps. And I'm like, well, that's stupid. How about
But go
you
for it.
fix, yeah, how about you fix whatever's happening in your gut and just keep eating gluten?
Mm-hmm.
It's probably not the gluten. That's my
Spoiler
opinion on
alert.
that. I think another issue with the gluten is that like gluten-free diets are like seen as like detoxing almost. And that makes no sense to me. We're going to go into detoxing a little bit in the next episode, but you don't really need anything to detox your body. I'll say one statement because we'll go into it more. You don't really need anything to detox your body. Your body detoxes every single day itself because that's what it was meant to do.
Period.
But I think where people are so like everywhere, and which granted I didn't know what gluten was for a while. Even a little bit like recently, like my one friend asked like what is gluten, and she like looked at me for the answer cuz I have the health podcast, and I was like, such a good question.
Let me look into it.
Yeah, literally. And then once you do look into it and then hearing people say like, "Oh, I'm going to cut out gluten and this is going to fix my problem." And I think gluten's like protein, where they're like think it's like a one-stop shop fix of I'm just going to cut this out or I'm just going to add this in, and why is it not fixing anything? And it's like that's not the problem at all actually.
I would say a lot of like the quick fix is like the protein, adding the protein or removing the gluten or the dairy. And I
Yes.
will say, like, it really depends on like what symptoms are, because if you're trying to figure out like what foods might be triggering it, like usually like an elimination diet will probably start with dairy. It'll
Mhm.
probably, if that doesn't fix it, go to gluten. And just that's just the route that it takes, because they are the most likely triggers if there are like triggers, whether it's like eczema or just like different type of skin problems like ear infections, things like that, more so in like kids, but if they're unresolved, probably into adulthood as well. But they're usually your top contenders.
Because they're all gut triggers.
Mhm. And if your
Let's bring
gut's
it
not
back to
healthy.
Yeah, let's bring it back to what it truly is. My grandfather, he says when he's trying to figure out what's like wrong with someone, pretty much, he cuts out all of like the allergens and like gluten and dairy and all that kind of stuff. They're all things that will affect the gut and cause serious problems. And then once you do kind of figure out what it is, then you can combat it. But generally, in very rare cases, I don't want to say very rare, in some cases, cutting out that dairy and cutting out the gluten does help things. But a lot of times you're then looking at more products that are in boxes and bags for that little gluten free label. And then you're like, oh, it's gluten free. I can have it. And it has horrible, horrible things in it. And it's like you're not so much helping yourself like you think you are.
And that's
Same
why I
with the
said like
dairy
the
free situation.
gluten-free labels don't just automatically mean healthier, because the majority of the people listening to this, or even just like in our country, like you don't have a gluten issue, like period. You should focus on the rest of your gut and health and
Yeah.
well-being and exercise and sleep and stress and hydration a little bit more before we're like, oh, it's gluten, that's the answer.
Majority of you have a folic acid issue. And no one looks into folic acid.
There's a test that's the MTHFR gene mutation, correct?
Yes.
There are tests that you can confirm that. Now, I don't know what they are, but I do know that they exist if that's something that you want to confirm.
I should
Just saying.
confirm it. I'll have
I'd
to
be
look into
interested.
it. Yes, because that creates all kinds of problems, and I don't even really want to get into it right now, but because of women who are pregnant and having high amounts of folic acid, and then if they have a baby who is an
THFR gene carrier.
if they are like an MTHFR carrier, that could create problems for the baby, or things like that. So it's a whole big thing. Granted, it's kind of somewhat of an easier fix. So what it is methylfolate breaks down folic acid. The people that can't process folic acid don't naturally produce methylfolate. You just supplement a methylfolate supplement, and now you have an easier time breaking down folic acid. Rather than cutting out gluten.
Yeah, the problem with that gene mutation is that your body cannot convert the folic acid to folate, which is needed.
Yes.
So that's why the methylated version of a supplement or part of a multivitamin is helping your body absorb that folate because it doesn't have to do the processing of it.
Yes.
Fun facts. All right. Anything else on gluten?
Gluten.
Do you remember that Viner?
What
Gluten.
The whole entire time it's been in my head, and we've been talking about gluten. Literally.
We should link him in the show notes. I'll have to find him. I forget his name.
To find it. I don't remember. Like, it's just been ringing in my head every time we say gluten.
Alex Ramos. I miss him. I listen to him all the time. I think I've looked up YouTube videos of just his gluten. Yep. There's an best Alex Ramos Vine compilation. We'll link that in the show notes for gigs. Shits and gigs.
Thank God.
That wraps up part 2 of our food myth series. Today, we broke down some of the biggest misconceptions around milk, protein, and gluten, 3 topics that can get pretty polarizing in the nutrition world. Hopefully, this conversation helped bring some clarity and reminded you that nutrition doesn't have to be extreme to be effective. Most healthy diets are built on balance, variety, and consistency, not cutting out entire food groups because of internet trends. In part 3, we're going to wrap up the series by tackling a few more myths that create a lot of confusion, including fruit, frozen foods, detoxes, and some other claims that tend to circulate in the wellness space. If you're enjoying this series, share this episode with a friend who feels overwhelmed by all the conflicting nutrition advice online. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and TikTok, and if you haven't already, follow us or subscribe to our channel so that more people like you can find our podcast. Whether it's YouTube, Apple, or Spotify, any shares, follows, subscriptions, they all help. So we thank you in advance. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time on the Sis Let's Heal podcast.